let's talk about one of the smallest but trickiest words in the English language, the. I mean, it's everywhere, right? But using it incorrectly is one of the quickest ways to sound, well, not quite like a native speaker. So today, we're going to figure out exactly when you should just leave the out of your sentences.
So, to get us started, just take a look at these sentences. How do they sound to you? Do they feel right?
If you've ever said something like this, you are definitely not alone. These are super common mistakes that a lot of English learners make. But here's the catch. Depending on the situation, all of these are actually wrong. And the big question is, why?
Well, don't you worry, because that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We are going to break down the rules step by step and make them so simple you'll never have to second-guess yourself again. So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the big stuff, like people and places. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of daily life and institutions. After that, we'll tackle some of those bigger, more abstract ideas, and of course, we'll finish up with a little quiz to make sure it all sticks. Sound good? Let's go.
All right, Section 1, People, Places, and Names. The secret weapon for this whole section is a simple grammar idea you probably already know, the proper noun.
Okay, so rule number 1 is probably the easiest one. We almost never use the before a person's name. So it's never the Lucy, it's just Lucy. And this is true even if they have a title, like doctor or professor. You just say, Dr. Key is on her way. Simple as that.
And you know what? The same logic applies to most big places on the map. We don't use the for continents, so it's just Africa, not the Africa. And this is true for most countries too. You'd say, I'd love to visit Canada, not the Canada.
But, and you knew there'd be a but, right? English loves its exceptions. If a country's name is plural, or if it sounds like it's made up of a bunch of smaller parts, like the United States or the United Kingdom, then it does get a the. The same goes for groups of islands, like the Philippines.
Now, as we kind of zoom in from countries to cities, that know the rule generally sticks. We don't use it with city names, it's just he lives in London. This also applies to most street names. You live on Cherry Tree Avenue, not the Cherry Tree Avenue.
So, what about beautiful spots in nature? Well, for individual lakes and single mountains, we follow the exact same pattern, no the. So you get Lake Como and Mount Everest. See? It's pretty consistent when you get the hang of it.
This rule also pops up in the business world. Most company names and airlines don't get a the. You fly on British Airways and Apple makes phones. Adding the here is a really common mistake, but dropping it will make you sound so much more natural.
Okay, moving on to our next section, institutions and daily life. Now this is where things get a little more subtle. It's all about the difference between talking about a general idea versus a specific physical building.
So here's the core concept you need to remember. Are you talking about the purpose of the place, or are you talking about the actual brick-and-mortar building? If you're talking about the general idea, like being a student at school or an inmate in prison, you leave the out. But if you're just popping in for a visit to a specific building, you use the.
Let's look at this in action because it makes it so much clearer. If you say, he's in prison, it means he's a prisoner. He's there for the purpose of the institution. But if you say, we went to the prison to see Tate, it means you were just a visitor at a specific building. Same thing for school. I went to school means you were a student, but I'm helping at the school refers to that one particular school building down the road.
Okay, remember that very first example, Ruth's in the hospital? This one is so fascinating because whether it's right or wrong literally depends on where you are in the world. In British English, a patient is in hospital, but in North American English, they're in the hospital. It's just a little regional quirk you have to remember.
And this same general idea applies to a few fixed phrases we use all the time. We just don't use the when talking about home, work, and bed in these contexts. It's always starts work, staying at home, or going to bed. Nice and simple.
All right, we're on to our last set of rules. This section covers all those general and abstract things in life, everything from meals and holidays to really big ideas.
So, the main rule here is that when we're talking about general things, not a specific one, we usually drop the. This applies to meals, so you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Same goes for holidays and festivals like Christmas or Diwali. It works for languages too. You study Japanese. And you guessed it, for sports. You play tennis, not the tennis.
And finally, this rule also covers big abstract ideas. We drop the for things you can't count, like sugar, and for huge concepts like love, peace, or happiness. Why? Because we're talking about the idea in general, not a specific pile of sugar or a specific person's love.
Phew, you made it through all the rules. Now it's time to put what you've learned to the test.
Let's do a quick quiz to see how you do. You ready?
Okay, first up, cocoa beans are grown in the Africa. What do you think? Is that one right or wrong? Think back to that rule about continents.
And? You got it. That's incorrect. We don't use the before the names of continents. The correct sentence is just in Africa. Excellent work.
Okay, question number 2 is going to test you on one of those tricky exceptions we talked about. Which one of these is correct? Capital of Philippines or capital of the Philippines?
The correct answer is the second one. We absolutely need the here because the Philippines refers to a group of islands, which is one of our key exceptions. Amazing how one tiny 3-letter word can make all the difference, isn't it?
So look at that. We've covered a whole bunch of situations where you can confidently drop the from your sentences. You're now ready to avoid some of the most common grammar mistakes out there. But, this is really only half the picture, which brings us to one final big question. What about all the times you absolutely have to use it?